The day the Council witnessed humanity's polite mode turn off in real time was a day that would be etched into the annals of galactic history. A day when the carefully constructed facades of diplomacy were stripped away to reveal the raw, unfiltered truth. Ambassador Zorblat Vex of the Galactic Council shifted uncomfortably in his seat, watching the human representative with a mixture of fascination and growing unease. The council chambers, normally filled with the quiet murmurs of 28 different species discussing interstellar politics, had fallen eerily silent. All 68 eyes in the room, belonging to various delegates with anywhere from 2 to 8 visual organs each, were fixed on Ambassador Seraphine Riven of Earth. "So, you are telling me," Riven said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "that after 11 months of negotiations, after we provided your council with access to our quantum communication technology, after we helped defend your Rigel colonies from the etheric swarm, you have decided humanity isn't mature enough for full membership." Zorblat Vex cleared all 3 of his throats. The temperature regulators in his exosuit seemed to be malfunctioning because sweat was forming along his blue-scaled neck. Riven's tone triggered a surge of ancestral warning instincts within him. "Ambassador Riven," he began cautiously, "the Council appreciates Earth's contributions. Truly, we do. But certain behavioral patterns observed among humans have raised concerns." Council leader Galactic, an imposing figure with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water, leaned forward. "Perhaps if you could help us understand why your species seems to vacillate between extreme politeness and alarming aggression. Our cultural observers report that humans can switch between these states with disturbing rapidity." Riven nodded pleasantly, straightening her formal diplomatic uniform. "I see. And which observations led to this conclusion?" The delegate Vespera Thorn, a gelatinous being from the methane oceans of Sylvanus Nova, wobbled forward. 5 solar cycles ago, a human trade representative named James Garcia was negotiating with Kael'thar merchants when they attempted to raise prices mid-agreement. He smiled, excused himself, went into another room, and punched a wall with such force he fractured several phalanges in his hand. He then returned, still smiling, and continued negotiations as if nothing had happened. "That's just James," Riven said with a light laugh. "He has anger management issues. We all find it quite embarrassing, but it's not just James Garcia," interjected Delegate Draco Stahl, his antenna twitching nervously. "Our psychological profile of your species indicates you all possess this capability for contained rage. You bottle emotions in a way no other sentient species does. It's unsettling." Riven's smile remained perfectly in place, but Zorblat Vex noticed her right hand tighten slightly around her datapad. His third heart began beating faster. In his 550 years as a diplomat, he'd learned to spot danger signs across dozens of species. Something was happening here. "Ambassador," Council leader Galactic continued, oblivious to the warning signals Zorblat Vex was picking up, "we have reviewed footage from your Earth entertainment streams. Your species seems to glorify this transition from civility to violence. You call it snapping, or going off. We find it deeply concerning that your diplomatic corps might be operating under a similar restraint that could fail." Riven tilted her head slightly. "So, you are denying our membership application because humans get angry sometimes?" "Not precisely," Galactic said. "We are denying it because you hide your anger behind politeness until it explodes. The Council requires transparent emotional communication from all member species." "I see," Riven said, nodding thoughtfully. "And this decision is final?" The Council leader confirmed. "The Council has voted." The vote was 21 in favor of the delay and 7 against. "We recommend humanity spend another 75 years developing emotional regulation before reapplying." Riven placed her datapad with exquisite care. 75 years, she repeated. "A mere blink in cosmic terms." Galactic said magnanimously, "Your species is young. Use this time wisely." Zorblat watched in growing alarm as Riven's breathing pattern subtly changed. Her pupils dilated slightly. These were the tiny indicators his species had evolved to detect before a predator attacked. He attempted to capture Galactic's gaze to convey a warning, but the council leader had already shifted his attention to the next item on the agenda. Let us now proceed to discuss the matter of resource allocation in the Zephyria sector. No, Riven's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the chamber like a plasma blade. Galactic blinked all 6 eyes in surprise. "I beg your pardon," he said. "I said no." Riven stood, smoothing down her uniform. "We are not moving on. We are going to revisit this decision right now." The faintest murmur rippled through the chamber. No one interrupted council proceedings. The matter remained unresolved. "Ambassador Riven," Galactic said sternly, "perhaps this reaction demonstrates precisely the emotional volatility we are concerned about." Riven's smile didn't falter. "Oh, I'm being extremely polite right now, council leader. Trust me, what you are seeing is still very much humanity's diplomatic face." "Then we appreciate your restraint," Galactic said dismissively. "But the matter is closed for now." Riven's smile didn't waver. "Allow me to explain something about humans that your cultural observers missed. We don't hide our anger because we are deceptive. We hide it because we are trying to be kind to you." The chamber fell silent again. Even the environmental system seemed to quiet down. "But you see," Riven continued, picking up her datapad and casually scrolling through it, "humans learned long ago that our full emotional range tends to overwhelm other species. So, we developed what we internally call polite mode. It's our way of making the rest of you comfortable." A primal alarm rang in Zorblatvex's mind. "Perhaps we should call a brief recess," he suggested. "No recess," Riven said pleasantly. "I think it's time the council saw what happens when humanity's polite mode gets switched off, especially since you have just made a decision that affects the future of 17 billion humans without bothering to understand us first." She tapped her datapad, and on the massive view screen behind her, images began to appear, historical footage of human conflicts, sports competitions, and heated political debates. "This is humanity when we stop being polite," she said. "We built civilizations, waged wars, split atoms, and reached the stars, all while carrying emotions inside us that would shatter most of your species' minds." Zorblatvex noticed her hands were perfectly steady now. The tremor of contained anger was gone, replaced by something far more frightening: focused intensity. "Ambassador Galactic," the council leader said, raising his upper arms in a placating gesture, "this display is unnecessary." "Oh, I think it's very necessary," Riven replied. "Because in about 5 minutes, I'm going to stop being polite myself. And then we are going to have a completely unique kind of conversation about humanity's place in this council." The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. Zorblatvex looked at his fellow delegates, trying to gauge if anyone else understood the gravity of what was happening. They were about to witness something unprecedented, a human diplomat deliberately disengaging their emotional safeguards. And despite his fear, Zorblatvex couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity. What might occur when Ambassador Riven's polite mode is eventually deactivated? The council chamber's environmental system struggled to keep up with the rising tension. Several delegates had activated personal comfort fields, shimmering bubbles of altered atmosphere that helped manage their anxiety. Although Zorblatvex longed to withdraw into his own personal comfort zone, his role as a senior ambassador necessitated maintaining appearances. "Ambassador Riven," Council Leader Galactic said, his voice pitched to project calm authority, "your emotional display is being noted in the official record. This isn't helping your case." Riven laughed, not the polite, diplomatic chuckle that the delegates had heard from her during the past months of negotiations, but a raw and genuine laugh that made several delegates flinch. "That's the problem with you, Galactic," she said. "You think this is an emotional display." She pointed at her face. This is just me talking without the filter. The actual emotional display hasn't even started." Dracosthal's antennae were now completely flat against her head, a sign of extreme distress in her species. "Ambassador Riven, please," Dracosthal pleaded. "Think of the diplomatic repercussions." "Oh, I am, Riven replied casually, leaning against the speaking podium. I'm thinking about them, obviously. You want to know something fascinating about humans? When we are being polite, our thinking actually gets fuzzy. We hold back, we second guess. But when the politeness comes off, she snapped her fingers, the sound cracking through the chamber. Crystal clear thought. It's evolutionary fight or flight and all that. Zorblat Vex watched as Riven's entire demeanor transformed. The careful posture of a diplomat was melting away, replaced by something more primal, more confident. Her gestures became larger, her voice more dynamic. It was as if they were seeing an entirely different person emerge. Let's look at what just happened here, Riven continued. You have denied humanity membership based on cultural observations so flawed they'd be laughable if they weren't so dangerous. You have ignored our scientific contributions, our military support during the etheric swarm crisis, and our good faith negotiation. She began to pace, and Zorblat noticed how several guards tensed, hands moving subtly toward weapons. Riven also noticed this and smiled at the guards, not with a diplomatic smile but with a predatory one. Don't worry, boys. I'm not going to attack anyone. That's not how this works. How does that work exactly? Galactic demanded. All pretenses of calm are now abandoned. The politeness switch, Riven explained, as if talking to a child. See, when humans turn off polite mode, violence is actually way down on the list of possible responses. Brutal honesty comes first. Therefore, allow me to be brutally honest with you, Council Leader. She stepped closer to Galactic's elevated platform, ignoring the warning beeps as she crossed security boundaries. Your decision is garbage. It's not based on genuine concern for emotional transparency. It's based on fear. Your fear stems from the fact that humans are a diverse group. You can't comprehend that. That's quite enough. Galactic's voice boomed through amplifiers. I'm just getting started, Riven shot back. Let's talk about the real reason behind this decision. Resource competition. Earth controls 75% of the galaxy's quantum communication networks. We have the best terraforming technology, and our military, while small, has proven remarkably effective against threats your combined forces struggled with. The chamber had gone so quiet that Zorblat Vex could hear the slight buzzing of Dracos Thal's wings, an involuntary stress response. Riven was identifying the unspeakable, the political calculations underlying diplomatic decisions that should remain unsaid. This isn't about our emotions, Riven continued. It's about power. You are using our emotional instability as an excuse to keep humanity sidelined, while you figure out how to replicate our tech. Galactic's skin was changing colors rapidly, flashing from iridescent blue to angry purple. These accusations are outrageous. Are they? Riven pulled up data on her pad, projecting it onto the main screen. Here's an intriguing correlation. Every time humanity has shared a technological breakthrough, the Council has raised a new cultural concern about our readiness. Over the last 5 years, this has happened 8 times. What a wonderful coincidence. Zorblat Vex felt a growing sense of dread. Riven was dismantling decades of careful political maneuvering in minutes. Worse, she was doing it with facts, uncomfortable, undeniable facts that the Council had carefully avoided examining directly. Ambassador Zorblat Vex, he said cautiously, perhaps we could discuss these concerns in a smaller committee. No more committees, Zorblat Vex, Riven said, not unkindly. No more private meetings where nothing gets resolved. This process happens right here, right now, in front of every delegate. She turned back to address the entire council. You know what's really ironic about this situation? Humans developed the polite mode because we believed it would help us integrate more effectively with galactic society. We studied all of your cultures, learned your communication styles, and modified our behavior to make you feel comfortable. And you are using that consideration against us. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Zorblat Vex could see Riven's words landing with uncomfortable precision. Let me tell you what happens next, Riven continued, her voice now deadly calm. I'm going to leave this chamber today, and I'm going to contact Earth. I'm going to recommend that we immediately suspend sharing all quantum communication technology. I'm going to suggest we review our military support agreements for the Rigel colonies, and then I'm going to propose that humanity begin seeking bilateral agreements with individual species, rather than working through this council. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates leapt to their feet, shouting questions and objections. Galactic was frantically trying to restore order, all 6 of his eyes wide with alarm. Riven stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos she'd created, watching with an almost curious expression. Zorblat Vex realized with a jolt that she wasn't angry anymore. She was calculating. The emotional display had been strategic, a controlled burn rather than an explosion. As the noise reached a crescendo, Riven simply raised her hand. Remarkably, the chamber fell silent. That was just a preview of what happens when one human turns off polite mode, she said quietly. Imagine what would happen if all of humanity decided to stop being polite at once. She let that thought hang in the air for a moment. Humanity doesn't need to wait 75 years to develop emotional regulation, Council Leader. We mastered that skill millennia ago. What you are seeing isn't a lack of control. It's me choosing to show you exactly how controlled I can be. Zorblat Vex watched in fascination as Riven smoothly transitioned back into her diplomatic persona. Posture straightening, expression softening, voice returning to its measured tone. It was like watching someone put on a mask, except now everyone could see it for what it was, a courtesy, not a necessity. I will give the Council 1 standard day to reconsider its position, she said pleasantly. During that time, I suggest you review the actual data on human diplomatic interactions, rather than relying on sensationalized cultural reports. With that, she gathered her materials and walked calmly toward the exit. Just before leaving, she turned back. Oh, and Council Leader, the next human you meet might not be as patient as I am. We are not all like me. She smiled that diplomatic smile again, but now every delegate could see the predator behind it. Some of us are much worse at staying polite. The doors sealed behind her, leaving the Council in stunned silence. The implications of what they had just witnessed were profound. They had seen the raw, unfiltered truth of humanity's emotional range, and it was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The Council would never be the same, and neither would the galaxy, for that matter. The day humanity's polite mode turned off had arrived, and with it, a new era of galactic politics, one where emotions were laid bare and truths were spoken without filter. Zorblat Vex looked around at his fellow delegates, seeing the same realization dawning on each alien face. They had gravely misunderstood humanity, and they now had less than 1 day to figure out how to correct their mistake. This situation was unprecedented, outrageous, and a complete violation of Council decorum. Galactic's forearms gestured wildly as he paced the emergency session chamber. The crisis meeting had only admitted the highest-ranking delegates, and the tension was palpable. With respect, Council Leader, Zorblat Vex said, sipping a calming solution through his exosuit's nutrition port. I believe focusing on the breach of decorum is missing the larger point. What point would that be? Galactic snapped, all 6 eyes blinking asynchronously, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. Ambassador Riven just demonstrated exactly why our assessment of humanity was flawed, Zorblat Vex replied. We accused them of unpredictable emotional volatility, yet what we witnessed was precisely controlled communication designed to achieve specific diplomatic outcomes. Delegate Vespera Thorn wobbled nervously, his gelatinous form rippling with stress patterns. She threatened us. She practically declared economic warfare. Did she, though? Draco Stahl asked, her antenna now uncurled as her initial fear gave way to analytical thought. She outlined potential consequences of our decision. Consequences that any of us might have anticipated if we had taken the time to thoroughly analyze the scenario. The chamber felt quiet as the delegates considered this. Zorblat Vex pulled up the meeting records on his data terminal, replaying Riven's outburst with professional interest. Look at her vital signs during the confrontation, he noted, displaying the security system's biometric readings. Her heart rate was elevated but steady, her respiration was controlled, and her stress hormones were increased but remained within normal parameters for her species. The culprit wasn't someone losing control. The action was a calculated diplomatic maneuver. Grellick's Kale collapsed into his ceremonial seat, his skin fading to a dull gray. Are you suggesting she planned this response? Not necessarily planned, Zorblat Vex said, but she certainly leveraged the moment when it presented itself. And most importantly, she did exactly what we claimed humans cannot do. She expressed genuine emotion while maintaining complete functional control. Senior Delegate Virik, who had been silently watching from the shadows, finally spoke. The ancient reptilian voice sounded like crushed gravel. We have made a serious miscalculation. The humans don't lack emotional regulation. They simply operate with different parameters than we do. Different and potentially dangerous, muttered Vespera Thorn. Different and extraordinarily effective, countered Virik. Consider what Ambassador Riven accomplished in less than 30 minutes. She disrupted our entire agenda, forced an emergency session, exposed political maneuvering we have spent years concealing, and established a clear leverage position for renegotiation. She did all of this without making a single threat of violence or even raising her voice above the level of conversation. And now we have less than 24 hours to formulate a response. Grellick's Kale said miserably, that timeline may have just shortened considerably. He paused, his communication unit chiming. Upon reviewing the message, he experienced a simultaneous thumping of his 3 hearts. Earth's central government has issued a statement expressing concern about the Council's decision. The central government is requesting that all human ships and personnel throughout Council space prepare for a potential return to Earth territories. The chamber erupted again in alarm chatter. Grellick's Kale had to pound his ceremonial staff 5 times to restore order. They wouldn't really pull out of Council space, would they? Vespera Thorn said, though his form was now quivering so violently that small droplets were separating from his main body mass. The economic disruption would harm them as much as us, Draco said quietly. Humanity has maintained remarkable self-sufficiency, even while integrating with galactic trade, Zorblat Vex said. They produce 95% of their food, generate their energy, and maintain independent manufacturing for all essential technologies. Zorblat Vex nodded. Meanwhile, 44 Council worlds now depend on human quantum communication technology. Human military vessels primarily defend the Rygo colonies, while human navigational systems rely on 8 major trade routes. They have made themselves essential while we weren't paying attention. Draco Stahl realized aloud. No, Virik corrected him. We were paying attention. We just focused on the wrong things. We were so concerned about their emotional expressions that we failed to notice their strategic positioning. Grellick's Kale's complexion was gradually improving as he processed this information. So, what do we do now? Simply capitulate to their demands. That would make the Council appear weak, Grellick's Kale said. The Council already appears weak, Zorblat Vex said bluntly, embracing a bit of human-style directness himself. Ambassador Riven exposed that weakness. Our choice now is whether to address it honestly or continue the pretense. A new alert flashed across the main screen. Zorblat Vex read it and felt a chill run through his cooling tubes. It seems humanity is not waiting for our day to expire. Human merchants throughout the Zephyria sector have begun suspending transactions, citing system maintenance. Human diplomatic staff on 17 worlds have requested temporary leave for consultation, and their military vessels in the Rigel sector have initiated what they are calling routine exercises that effectively create a defensive perimeter around their primary installations. They are positioning for withdrawal without actually withdrawing, Virik said with something that sounded almost like admiration. Another demonstration of control, showing us the consequence without fully executing it. Grellick's Kale sank deeper into his chair. We have seriously misjudged these people. Yes, agreed Zorblat Vex, but perhaps not for the reasons we initially thought. The problem isn't that humans are too emotional or unpredictable. The problem is that they are far more strategic than we gave them credit for. Draco Stahl's antenna twitched in a specific pattern that signaled the emergence of a new idea. What if that was the point all along? What if humans developed this polite mode specifically to make other species underestimate them? The chamber fell silent as this possibility sank in. That would imply a species-wide deception spanning their entire contact with galactic civilization. Vespera Thorn finally said. Not deception, Virak corrected. Strategy. There's a difference. Zorblat Vex found himself nodding. Consider Earth's history. They developed in isolation on a planet with extreme environmental variation and thousands of competing cultures. They had to become masters of adaptive behavior just to coexist with each other, let alone with alien species. So, what do we do? Galacticdiplomacy asked, all pretense of confident leadership now abandoned. Zorblat Vex stood up. I suggest we do something unprecedented. I suggest we turn off our version of polite mode and engage with humanity honestly. We admit our miscalculation, acknowledge their strategic position, and negotiate in good faith. The Council has never admitted error. Then perhaps it's time we learn from humanity's example, Zorblat Vex replied. They have shown us that controlled authenticity can be more effective than rigid diplomatic protocol. Galacticdiplomacy was quiet for a long moment, his skin cycling through a range of colors as he processed this advice. Finally, he looked up. Contact Ambassador Riven. Request her immediate return to the council chamber. But not for a formal session. Invite her for what humans call a candid conversation. As the delegates dispersed to make preparations, Zorblat Vex found himself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion. Something like anticipation mixed with respect. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he wasn't entirely sure what would happen next. And somehow, that uncertainty felt like progress. Ambassador Riven returned to the council chamber exactly 4.5 hours after her dramatic exit. However, the room had undergone a transformation this time. They had replaced the formal seating arrangement with a circular configuration, removing the usual hierarchical elevation for senior members. They had adjusted the environmental settings to Earth-standard comfort levels, abandoning the council compromise that subtly favored the biology of longer-standing members. Zorblat Vex noticed these details with approval. Galacticdiplomacy had taken the suggestion of honesty seriously. Ambassador Riven, Galacticdiplomacy greeted her, rising from his seat. Galacticdiplomacy replaced his formal robes with simpler attire, another symbolic gesture. Thank you for returning on such short notice. Riven surveyed the room, taking in the changes with a quick, assessing glance. Interesting redecorating council leader. It almost feels like you are trying to make a human feel at home. That is precisely the intention, Galacticdiplomacy confirmed, though I suspect you are too observant to be swayed by mere environmental adjustments. A small smile played at the corner of Riven's mouth. They are appreciated nonetheless. Symbolism matters in diplomacy, as we all know. She took the offered seat, her posture relaxed, but alert. Zorblat Vex found himself studying her with new eyes. Was this the diplomatic mask, the polite mode they discussed, or was this the real Seraphine Riven? Perhaps the most unsettling revelation was that both could be true simultaneously. I assume this isn't a standard council session, Riven said, glancing around at the reduced number of attendees. No, Galacticdiplomacy confirmed. This is what my advisors have suggested we call a candid conversation. I believe humans value these. Riven acknowledged we do. However, I am curious about what has caused this sudden interest in human conversational preferences. Galacticdiplomacy's skin rippled with colors that Zorblat Vex recognized as indicators of discomfort and resolution. Your demonstration earlier today has prompted significant reconsideration of our position regarding humanity. My demonstration? Riven repeated, eyebrows raised. You mean when I turned off polite mode? Yes, Galacticdiplomacy said. It was educational. A laugh escaped Riven, a genuine, unguarded sound that started to transform the chamber's atmosphere. That's one way to put it. And now you want to... what? Negotiate more favorable terms? Try to walk back the 75-year delay without losing face. No. Zorblat Vex interjected, earning a surprised look from Galacticdiplomacy. We want to understand. Riven turned her attention to him, head tilted slightly. Understand what? Ambassador Zorblad Vex? Everything we misunderstood before, he replied. This polite mode you described, the strategic control behind what we mistook for emotional volatility, the way humanity has positioned itself within galactic politics, while we were busy analyzing the wrong aspects of your behavior. Riven studied him for a long moment, then looked around at the other delegates. You are serious. Completely. Galactic confirmed. The Council has operated for millennia on certain assumptions about diplomatic protocol and behavior. Your actions today challenge those assumptions in ways we cannot ignore. Riven leaned back in her chair, considering this. So, this isn't about our membership application anymore. On the contrary, Virek rumbled from his position at the far side of the circle. It is precisely about your membership, but perhaps not in the way you expect. The ancient reptilian leaned forward, scales catching the light. Ambassador Riven, the Council has existed for over 15,000 years. In that time, we have incorporated hundreds of species, navigated countless conflicts, and established protocols that have maintained relative peace across 4 galactic arms. He paused, fixing Riven with his unblinking gaze. And yet, in less than 3 standard years of interaction with humanity, we find ourselves questioning foundational aspects of how we operate. This level of inquiry is unprecedented. Riven's expression remained neutral, but Zorblad Vex noticed her pulse rate increasing slightly on his biometric scanner, a sign of genuine interest or surprise. We are curious by nature, she said finally. Humans, I mean. We tend to question systems rather than simply adapting to them. Yes, Dracosthal agreed, antenna swaying thoughtfully. And that quality, which we initially mistook for immaturity or rebelliousness, may in fact be your species' most valuable contribution to the Council. Riven's eyebrows shot up. Are you saying you are proposing? Galactic interrupted, saying, we need to immediately reverse our earlier decision. Not only will we accept humanity's membership application, but we will also establish a new role in the Council hierarchy. A role focused specifically on systemic evaluation and innovation. The chamber fell silent as Riven processed this unexpected proposal. You want humanity to be your official critics, she said finally. The species that points out when the Emperor has no clothes. Zorblad Vex's translation implant struggled with the idiom, but he grasped the meaning from context. In essence, yes, though we would frame it more as institutional evolution catalysts. A slow smile spread across Riven's face, not the diplomatic mask, nor the predatory expression from earlier, but something new, something genuinely amused. Only the Galactic Council could respond to having its flaws exposed by creating a formal position for flaw exposers, she said, shaking her head. You realize how bureaucratic that is, right? Perhaps that is precisely why we need humanity's perspective, Galactic acknowledged, his skin shifting to a hue that indicated rueful acknowledgement. Our methods have served us well, but rigidity has consequences. Riven considered the question for a long moment. I will need to consult Earth's central government, of course, and we would have conditions. We anticipated as much, Galactic said, and we are prepared to engage in good faith negotiations, starting with the immediate rescinding of the membership delay. Riven pressed, consider it done. Galactic concurred, saying, we will make a formal announcement during the next full council session. Riven nodded, then looked directly at Zorblad Vex. You know, Ambassador, I believe you were the only one who saw what was really happening today. Zorblad Vex felt his scales flush slightly with the unexpected recognition. I have studied human behavior extensively. It is fascinating. And now I'm curious, she continued. Does the Council have its version of polite mode? Some set of behaviors you have adopted to make interactions smoother that might be limiting genuine communication? The delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. It was Virek who finally answered. The Council has been operating in what you might call polite mode for 15 millennia. Perhaps it is indeed time to consider switching it off occasionally. Riven laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to transform the chamber's atmosphere. Well, I'd recommend easing into it. Humanity has experienced firsthand the dire consequences of completely disabling politeness. Then perhaps, Galactic suggested, humanity's role could include teaching the Council how to navigate this balance, when to maintain diplomatic protocol, and when to engage more directly. Cultural exchange as a two-way street. Riven mused. What a concept. Zorblat Vex found himself experiencing an unfamiliar sensation, optimism about the Council's future. In his centuries of diplomatic service, he had observed countless minor adjustments to the galactic order, but this felt different, fundamental. I believe, he said carefully, that we may look back on today as a pivotal moment in Council history, the day we began to evolve beyond our limitations. Riven looked at him with newfound respect. That's surprisingly philosophical for a Council diplomat. Ambassador Zorblat Vex, are you sure your polite mode is still fully engaged? She asked, a playful note in her voice. For the first time in his long career, Zorblat Vex allowed himself to respond with complete honesty, without filtering through diplomatic protocol. Perhaps not, Ambassador Riven, and I find I don't mind at all. As the impromptu session continued, developing into a genuinely open exchange of perspectives, Zorblat Vex reflected on the strange chain of events that had brought them here. The Council had feared humanity's emotional unpredictability, only to discover that the real danger lay in their strategic adaptability and willingness to challenge established systems. And perhaps, he thought as he watched Riven laughing at something Dracosthal had said, that wasn't a danger at all but precisely what the galaxy needed. Sometimes, it took someone turning off polite mode to show you the truth. You've been too polite to see yourself.